You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Today's episode is with Justin Raymond, the founder and CEO of Flexday. Flexday is a Toronto-based startup that is looking to create a community of office-free workers where nomads alike can work from different environments that energize them individually. I'm a happy consumer of Flexday, and I've been nomading through their 20 different locations as my personal office throughout the week. And as someone who really truly believes in this new way of working, I'm definitely in big support of what the company's MO is. Justin personally has had just a truly fascinating career where he has just gone about creating 3 successful companies that are still even in operation today, and Flexday is his 4th. And he was also the North American president of Hailo, a UK-based taxi app company that competed in the rideshare market with Uber and Lyft in the earlier days. So we get to really explore what the competition was like and what he really went through, contrasting with when he was an entrepreneur running his own companies compared to joining a larger organization like Hailo. And Justin's story was just a fascinating one where he's just constantly listening to his own gut and really sticking to the mental model of just always building a company with a mission of social responsibility at its core. And he constantly hints at that and talks about that throughout our conversation. And I never really connected the dots, but only through really going through the details and the intentions behind his actions did I actually see that and really kind of understand what really drove him to go through this crazy journey of his. And so before we go into the interview, I just wanted to remind you guys as listeners to help support the podcast by rating it on iTunes, by giving it a 5-star rating, and it really helps the podcast grow and reach a wider audience. And it really also helps if you can leave a positive review on just how the podcast may have helped you expand your perspective in different ways. And if you do leave a review, I will always give a shout out when I next read it. And I'll also mention your ID name as well. And so, yeah, without further ado, here is my conversation with Justin Raymond. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today's podcast guest is Justin Raymond. Hey Justin, thanks for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Justin is the founder and CEO of Flexday here in Toronto. And so Justin, for the audience members who may not be familiar with your product, how would you describe Flexday and what you guys do?
Flexday is a new offering in the world of workspace. We take excess capacity in restaurants, hotels, and cafes across the city, and we turn them into highly functional places to work and meet.
Excellent. And how many users do you have currently in the system?
We just surpassed 3,000 users. We call them members. And we're off to a great start.
Yeah, and I'm one of the happy members of the product as well. And right now we're recording from one of the Flexday offices. I guess this is your headquarter office, the central location in Spadina.
Yeah, this is part of our hub and spoke test. We like to have a little bit of classic office space, but we really focus on the distributed office network,
Gotcha.
Being in new spaces with no overhead.
Gotcha. And before we go deeper into Flexday, I think I want to take it back much earlier to your childhood eras. Last time we spoke, you talked about how your father was an entrepreneur, and if I'm correct, he founded a steel company. Was he always an entrepreneur while you were growing up? Is that all you saw of your dad constantly running his own company?
That's all I ever saw. I know that he had an early sales position with an insurance company when he first started into the workforce. I think the inability to control his own future and destiny and pace of which things would evolve was the catalyst for him to start his own business, and which is very similar to my experience myself. It's entrepreneurialism is really based on a little bit of controlling your own destiny, as opposed to being at the whim of decisions made by other people. So yeah, my dad was an entrepreneur, and I am as well.
When you were young, did your parents kind of try to nudge you into the entrepreneurial path, or were they actually more against it?
They didn't really. They were, when your summer rolled around as a student, you always had to demonstrate how you were going to stay busy and hopefully make some money. I waited many tables through my university days, but I also started my own companies, student window cleaning, different sort of neighborhood entrepreneurial, easy setup type ventures to bring in more money and learn the ropes of starting and running a business. So just always out looking for the next thing. My parents were supportive. I think when I was younger, I think when it became more of a career path that I was defining, there was definitely the safeguarding, that came into play. Even my father, as an entrepreneur, was, I think, a little bit concerned about the path, just because it's high risk, and it's a lot of parents. Their job is to keep you safe and to try to keep you out of harm's way. And the entrepreneurial route is full of ups and downs, and I think that there was an element of protecting going on, but at the end of the day, they had to embrace it because it's just what I did. Yeah, and you mentioned about how you had started various entrepreneurial ventures even when you were a student. And so you went to school in McGill, and you did the Bachelor of Education. Was the initial intent to become a teacher, or why did you go that path? If you thought about being an entrepreneur and experimenting with it? Honestly, at that point in time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just thought a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, was a little less applicable in the real world. So I thought, I'll go the teacher route and see where that ends up. I did really enjoy the teaching aspect that was involved in the McGill curriculum. So you actually did get to take classes, teach classes, high school classes. And I loved the experience. I learned a lot about myself early on, but I also learned that I didn't want to be a teacher.
No, that's a valuable discovery to have
early
on. And so if I look at if anyone looks up your LinkedIn, we see McGill Education, then you went to Lang & Associates as an account manager, and then I think that's where we see the pivot into more the entrepreneurial journey, where you were one of the founders of Taxi Guy, co-founded Cellwand, and then you also you're a founder of Carbon Accounting, and then you go into Hailo, which is still then a startup, and then you advise startups, and now you've founded Flexday. So multiple startups in your journey. What happened in Lang & Associates? That's a marketing firm, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so they specialize in associative marketing, the link between sports, sponsorship, and brand, psychographics, demographics. So they would take, at that time the focus was around the Olympic Games in Atlanta in '96, and Lang & Associates did a great job of linking the brand properties, whether it's Coca-Cola Classic or Fresca or Sprite or any of the different brands that they had, with the user base and the sport that would make the most sense. And then they would build sponsorship platforms for those retail activations across the country. So, I loved it. It was a great early opportunity to explore all of North America. I traveled a lot. I executed major sponsorship agreements with USA Cycling and National Off-Road Mountain Bike Association, tons of different things that brought the real world of business into my life. I also got to see firsthand how Coca-Cola works, the business processes that they use, and just get comfortable with the processes that are in place and what is required in order to get projects completed properly. So I had a great experience there. I think the reality was what sort of led me to go into my own path was a job came up sort of in the next phase of the business, and I applied for it, thought that I was deserving of the job, but didn't get it. And then it sort of hit me that this is the kind of thing where I don't get to control my own destiny. My destiny is controlled by yeses and nos by other people, and it just didn't really sit well with me. I wanted to go at my own pace and create a future that I defined.
And so how did the initial kind of decision-making process go? Did you just, after you get the job rejection, was it just a quick, you know what, this isn't right, I'm going to quit Lang and I'm going to start something? Or how was the...
So during my time of traveling, I entertained a lot of different people at different functions, and I was kind of troubled by just the lack of options when it came to other people potentially drinking and driving. That just sort of stuck out to me, like, there's no tool, there's no action-based opportunities for people to get a cab easily anywhere across the United States or across North America. There wasn't just an easy turnkey phone number. I thought was the easiest tool. And there were lots of different vanity numbers in the market. 1-800-Flowers was huge. So I just looked into the opportunity around what type of technology would be required in order to build a tool where anybody, anywhere, could have an easy-to-remember phone number for taxi cab service, and get them and their friends home safely. So, long story short, I met with an AT&T engineer and found out about their basically their automatic number identifying software systems and how those networks worked. And I built a solution called 1-888 Taxi Guy, and took that to Molson back here. I flew home and presented it to Molson, and they loved it. Molson Canada at the time. They loved it and sponsored it, and basically helped me build the plan for the rollout across Canada. So that was the fork in the road, and I went down the entrepreneurial path at that time.
Yeah, and was this still during the late 90s, during like the kind of the tech boom?
This was 98.
Okay.
Is when we first signed the deal with Molson, and and the company's still alive today. And we've done right around 5 million safe rides home. And a lot of it was beginning payphone technology that moved into cell phones, mobile phones, and then an app. And it was a great program. It accomplished all of its objectives, the number one objective of which was just giving people an option to get a safe ride home.
So you were building out this plan back down in the States while you were there on travel for business?
Yeah, I was intrigued by the opportunity. I did a bunch of research on the side, so I guess that was my first official side hustle. And I just sort of found that I became really passionate about it, and I wanted to solve it. And as I started meeting with the right people, meeting with experts in both the taxi cab industry and the...
Just doing it all on your own time?
Yeah, my own time, yeah. I remember driving up to University of North Carolina to meet sort of like the most famous taxi cab industry. His name is Gorman Gilbert. He actually wrote the book called The Taxi Cab. And just sitting down with him and telling him about my vision for linking all of the mom and pop cab companies together through a toll-free phone number and asking his perspective on it. So I did that on the weekend. I just studied it, and then I ended up meeting the AT&T engineer, and that's where I started blueprinting the idea and really understanding how to do it. And then I sort of put myself in a position where I couldn't turn back, and that was with the conversation with Molson.
Wow. Why did you pick Molson?
Well, originally I met with the Brewers Association of Canada, showed them the idea. They told me that as an industry body they couldn't select which company I would work with. So they told me to make a decision and they would make the introduction. So they made the introduction and it went great.
Yeah, and I think as I think about it, it seems sometimes like the obvious, I guess, solution where, yeah, you've got companies selling beer, obviously want their customers to be happy and also safe, and this could be a great way for them to also contribute to that cause.
Yeah, social responsibility is huge.
Yeah.
In all aspects. And I think at the time the major breweries were saying, take care, know when to draw the line, sort of these like sound bites. And Taxi Guy was the first action-based tool that could actually give them some data demonstrating their impact, their positive impact on giving people an option and getting people home safely.
And so then once you get the, I guess, funding from Molson, was it just now you have a lot of money to just build out a full team that can really, I guess, synergistically?
It was pretty light on people. It was I think we got up to 5 or 6 people. But yeah, we built the telco infrastructure across the country. We built out a bilingual service, 1-888 taxi SVP, to make sure that Quebec was involved and happy. And then we layered on top of the telco infrastructure, we layered a payment device, which are actually paper-based, kind of like Canadian Tire Money, but it was called Taxi Dollars. Became the number one sales tool for Molson sales reps across the country that they would use in market as a customer added value piece, and it really became this whole program of social responsibility, and it was woven into almost every part of what Molson did. So it was great. It wasn't a massive revenue based company, but the impact that we made was very rewarding. Had a chance to speak at the multiple government levels around social responsibility and social businesses, and it was great, very rewarding on many levels.
And was this the venture where you said your parents were starting to kind of maybe say, hey, Justin, maybe you want to tone it down, maybe you don't want to go to entrepreneurship just yet, or?
Yeah, did you ever think about, maybe getting a sales job, entry-level job at a big corporation, whatever it was at the time, maybe IBM or Nortel or some growing industry, and they would throw those suggestions at me every once in a while. But again, it was really obvious that I wasn't going that route, and I think they just adjusted.
Yeah, and so then as you're operating Taxi Guy, then you start another company called Cellwand.
Yeah, so Cellwand.
How does that happen when you're already running one?
Yeah, so we had an opportunity. The technology was changing. Cell phones started emerging rapidly. Everybody was moving to that device or a device. And I saw an opportunity to create sort of the first abbreviated dialing or some dial shortcut that people could use on their cell phone rather than dialing 1-888 Taxi Guy. I wanted to make it a little bit easier, but also build some new business relationships with corporations. And so the concept was a number sign taxi or pound taxi would give people the opportunity to not only call a cab on their phone, but also we had the technology that would help them, that would basically eliminate busy signals. So one of the problems with landlines when calling cabs was you would get a busy signal, have to hang up, call back, busy signal. All of those kinds of things were difficult. So we built a little piece of software that allowed people to sit in a holding queue and find the first available dispatch that was available in cities. So Yeah, it was a neat little evolution of Taxi Guy. There were now two companies, so Taxi Guy stayed on its path. And Cell One moved towards relationships with wireless carriers. So first one was with Rogers. They were super supportive. It became a revenue share opportunity for them. And then we moved into Bell and Telus. And then the smaller ones, and then we started moving into the States. That's about the time that I sold my equity to Global Live, which is here in Canada. They're behind Wind, so they essentially bought my shares, and then the rest of the team continued forward and landed many of the wireless carriers in the U.S. The company, again, is still going today. Millions of calls. And also there was an element of social responsibility that was brought to the industry from a drinking and driving perspective as well. So it contributed greatly to that.
And yeah, it's crazy how the company resulted from, I guess, an inefficiency that you saw in your first company, and then so you just decided, you know what, I'm going to create another company that can solve this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been keenly aware of, how is this evolving, what's becoming outdated, what needs to be done in order to catch the next wave. So that was it was kind of like the perfect next step for a taxi industry solution, but a little more focus on mobile technology. So yeah, I mean, call it the evolution of, or the maybe disrupting your own business in some ways. But it was a great experience. It was an opportunity for me to understand new technology as well, and a new industry segment. So it was all in the name of evolution and continuing to be relevant.
Right, this continued path of growing and reinventing yourself, I guess, constantly.
Yes, especially with technology starting to speed up. You're really starting to see, wow, this is getting faster. Things are changing faster, and you could reach way more people sooner. So yeah, a lot was changing at that time. Yeah,
and I think, given your background, you started out in marketing. You were an account manager, so it's a very relationship-based skill set. So you didn't go to engineering, you didn't have a technical background, but you're getting deeper and deeper into this technology-based, new technology-based company. Were there moments of, I could totally see it, an average person just being doubtful and thinking, I can't do that. I don't have the technical background. I don't have this kind of skill set. How did you get over all that stuff?
To be honest, when I find a problem that I'm passionate about, I just go and try to figure it out. I don't think if you're open to researching and connecting with other people that have a variety of skills that you don't have, you can really solve anything. So when I didn't know something, I would go find somebody that knew about it, and I would talk to them about it. Oftentimes they would become enrolled in the mission, maybe at an advisor level, an investor level, or maybe even a partner level. No one person can solve something on their own. I knew that pretty early, and I love the opportunity of just learning and finding out, how to get something done, even though I didn't have the skill set. So I didn't struggle with a block around any of those things. I'm very persistent, and I'm extremely curious, and when I think that there's a gap in the market, or I think that there's a major problem that can be solved, especially if it has like a humanity element to it, I'm just driven to do it, and I just sort of follow my passion.
Yeah, and I think a constant recurring theme I see hosting these podcasts, and also just from all the reading of great entrepreneurs that I do, is the two big factors that intertwine all of them is curiosity and humility. Knowing that you can't solve it by yourself. You have to do it with a team or a community.
It's all about the support of the people around you. I mean, if you're the enabler, if you're creating the solution, and people see what you're up to, and your passion is usually contagious, especially if it's authentic. And I think, I was just lucky. I've always been lucky to find people that identify with the problem that I'm trying to solve, and they want to help, and they have the ability to help and the capacity to help, and they just do. It's just like anything. It takes a community, it takes a village in order to raise a child, but it's the same thing with a business. You're not doing it on your own, and you have to be honest with that and open to support. Raise your hand when you've got questions, and ask for those meetings, or those coffee chats or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And when you're running Salwan, you talked about you were very passionate about this social responsibility impact, but you sold your equity before, or whilst it was getting into a bigger market. Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, that was Salwan was a really great experience on many levels, both from a business perspective, but also from a life perspective, understanding and who I am as a business leader, as a founder. I was a co-founding. I have a co-founder, one of my childhood friends, and we got together. He loved the mission that I was putting on the board, and we decided to go at it together, which was great. I think the two of us, we could move mountains together, but at the end of the day, all startups hit sort of like critical strategic points where decisions have to be made, and oftentimes there's two different visions, or three or four, and you just have to make a call. And at that point, I had Taxi Guy, and I had some other ideas, and my co-founder was really passionate about the direction that he wanted to take the company, and I wasn't as much so. So I just let it go, and it was a good opportunity for me to focus on other things, and still be a part of the company, but not an active day-to-day participant. So it was great. It was a good life decision, understanding that things can get complicated, and things change, and you just move on and you take those learnings with you.
And I think now, as you reached this stage of your life, I think it's always, easier to look back with hindsight. But when you were actually experiencing it, how did you make, was there a specific decision process that you went through to have conviction over, I think this is the right path, this is the right decision I am making, and I can live with this and take the step forward?
It wasn't it wasn't about the business per se. It was more about where I was at. It was my gut, I just felt it was time to move forward and take what I consider the most important thing in the world is time. How am I going to use my time more effectively? So it was the right time. Mm-hmm. It was the right time for a move, and I felt that. I talked to my support network, and it was when I really evaluated the entire situation as a whole. It was a very easy decision, and it was great. It was a new door. While that door, I guess in some degrees closed, many more opened, and I was free. So it was great.
Right, and so you sell one, and you start another company, called Carbon Accounting. And was this company also being started whilst you were also at Taxi Guy as well? Or did you leave Taxi Guy and start this one?
No, Taxi Guy was now very automated. So it basically ran, it was continuously running on its own. Very few people, but mostly all telco tech, the back end. And Molson had taken they've taken control of the communications, the marketing, the PR. So it was kind of on autopilot. It was a great business, running on its own, and I had a lot of time to start to explore. And, at that time, there was a growing environmental movement around the triple bottom line and corporate social responsibility, but tied more to the environment. I had a keen interest in that area, and I understood transportation companies quite well, so I looked at the gap of what transportation companies were going to have to do in order to meet those the criteria of buyers of their services, and how are they going to document their goals, their carbon reduction strategies, and what framework are they going to do it in, and how are they going to answer RFPs from major buyers. And so I just sort of started studying the area and looking at it, and there was a real need, because there was just a lack of knowledge, a lack of expertise in the area, and I didn't have that expertise, but I did see the problem. So I just took the next steps and researched it and found out what would be the most acceptable. Where the biggest pain was in the industry. Just talked to some of the leading transportation companies here in Toronto, right in my own backyard. I just would drive around and leverage my network and go and sit down, and I found that there was a real need for their companies to be able to speak and act and report intelligently around carbon reduction strategies. It's just basically sustainability, and what were they doing to prepare themselves for that. And so I put together a very simple, almost agency approach, like an agency model, without real hardcore measurements, but just sort of starting to understand, do an inventory, understand what the baseline looks like, and then start putting a plan in place. And I realized that I needed an expert on the team, and that's where I started knocking on doors and finding different sustainability or carbon reduction experts that understood the greenhouse gas protocol and all the different requirements in order to make sure that this is done properly. And that's where I met. I remember I had a meeting with an organization, and there was a gentleman in the room. And I told him what I was doing, and I told them what I was doing and what I wanted to do. And this one person who ended up becoming my partner just loved it. He just thought that there was a real need there in the transportation industry for a focused program. And he just, he ended up calling me after the meeting and asking to have a coffee. And we sat down, and I signed him. His contract expired at the end of that month, and I brought him on, and right away, and he built the sort of the scientific side of it, so that we could make sure we were really doing what we said we were doing. His name's Ian Lipton. He just became such a great business partner and friend, and we built a great business very quickly. We stayed in the transportation space for a while. We did companies in 15 countries in our transportation program, and then we ended up building the same type but a little more robust reporting system for hotels around the world. And we landed Marriott International. Before we knew it, we had built a beautiful piece of software as a service, and we were managing every aspect of environmental reporting for almost 5,000 hotels around the world. It was really cool. I mean, it was just this you see a gap in the market, you figure out where the problems are, figured out how to solve it. And that was a great business, and there's still aspects of that business that are operating today. That's that story.
Wow. I think that I'm just listening to it, and it's so cool. So I can only imagine how much cooler it must have been when you're actually going through it. It's really neat how you had all this experience in transportation, and then you leveraged it, and you find a small different niche, but still there's an alignment with your passion of overall social responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so you, as like the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger said, you're just playing in your circle of competence, and you see, okay, how can I work this out? Mm-hmm. And you decide to start a company that in that small segment, and then it eventually blows up into having like 5,000 hotels later on, just eventually changing over.
It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, in the world of business travel, which is what we ended up quantifying for Fortune 1000 companies around the world, ground transportation was part of it. So rental cars, taxis, limousines, that kind of thing, black cars to the airport. They were definitely in that space and spending a lot of money in that space. They wanted quantification from an environmental perspective. But what they did even more than that was hotel stays and flights. Flights was kind of handled, but there was this massive gap in hotel quantification. Carbon and all aspects of sustainability needed to be measured and reported because they're all public companies and they needed to do this. And I remember meeting a gentleman from American Express Business Travel, and he loved what we were doing. And we told him about our hotel program, our nascent hotel program, and he said, we want to be the first ones on that. We want to get this out to our clients. And it was just, that type of catalyst that just drove it. And within 6 months, we had the top executives from Marriott International coming up to our little company in Toronto, sitting down negotiating a major software purchase. It's great.
Yeah. But did you guys have this kind of vision when you were starting off, like that we want to be this huge global company, or was it more, there's a small problem in like Toronto, we just want to fix that, and it just slowly evolves from there?
Yeah, I think, everything I've ever done has always included the possibility of something bigger. But the emphasis has always been on the earliest relationships and understanding why they're interested and why they continue to use something that I've built or we've built or we created software. It ties into Flexday today and all of the work we're doing around product market fit. It just has to start at the roots, and you got to never lose focus of that. And with the other companies, as long as the service works and people love it and it's providing value, I've always held that the conviction that this couldn't be anywhere. And I've always retained a focus on open possibilities and just letting it happen. But in order for that to be true, you have to make sure that everything's taken care of at the beginning. The first relationships are the most important. I think we always did a great job of that.
Yeah, and just really focusing on dominating a small niche and expanding from there, and not really thinking about expansion until you have something there with a competitive advantage in the beginning. It's
exactly it. You have to. There's always the allure of becoming bigger, fast. We already hear this from different potential investors, and that's a really difficult thing to manage, because sure, everybody wants to get big fast. That's there's all these stories about, oh my God, look at how quick and how fast and how big these companies are moving and have become. But you can't graduate until you do your homework, and the early stages of any business, you have to be obsessed with doing your homework and doing it very well, and then you'll graduate. And that's the root of any successful business. It always starts small, and the core of any business is doing the necessary work.
Yeah, I think someone's probably said this, I can't quote it to a particular individual, but practically it's along the lines of creating a product for everyone is practically making something for no one, because
right.
you can't start off with the entire world being your customer. There's always a small subset. Like not even Apple had everyone in mind. It was just a small subset of really niche hardcore users, and they spread it, and it eventually becomes for everyone. But even Uber wasn't for everyone. It was for some people who wanted to use an app to use someone else's car.
Totally. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and so this is going well. Carbon accounting is going well, but you transition out of that into now joining a company that you did not start called Hailo, which is a taxi-based company from the UK. How does that happen? You know, you're now stopping that entrepreneurship path to join the startup.
Yeah, so Taxi Guy was in good hands. The carbon accounting company was in great hands, and I just was watching. I had actually I had met somebody from Uber at one of these trade shows. It was right at the beginning of Uber, and
what year is this around?
This is 2009,
10?
A little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah, 2010, 2011. They were just starting their Uber cab, and they were causing a lot of headaches in San Francisco. They didn't really know what they were doing. They didn't even have an idea of what the possibility was, or what their business was going to become. But it was extremely interesting to me because yet again there was this new mobile technology, using GPS and the person's location to coordinate, basically transportation services, and it blew me away when I saw this because the possibilities were endless. And so I started looking into it, and I remember just people started coming at me with, what do you think of this? How do you think this is going to impact the industry, the transportation, whether it was cab companies or limousine companies or whoever? There just is this emerging discussion around the sort of, I guess, the people that were researching it. There was a lot of curiosity about how big this could become and what it could do to the industries. So I just dove into it. I started researching all of the different players in the market. Hailo was very interesting to me because they were creating this almost social network between cab drivers in London, and the daily active users were just exploding. The time on app was massive, and I just sort of was in this space, and then out of the blue I got a call from Jay Bregman, who was the CEO founder of Hailo, and he had talked to a mutual friend about their need to come to North America with their technology because they were exploding in London. And he asked our mutual friend who would he recommend, and so Scott was our mutual friend. He said, you got to talk to Justin. So next thing I knew, I was on the phone with Jay, and then I was on a flight to London, and I communicated to Ian, who's my business partner, that I was looking at this thing, and I was very curious about it, and he was fully supportive of it and said, go check it out. And then when I first used the app, the Hailo app, to summon a London black cab to pick me up from the hotel to bring me to the Hailo office for a meeting, I mean, it was just like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I couldn't believe it. I knew it was the future, and I ended up taking the role of president of Hailo Canada and building the system and the network here in Toronto and then Montreal. So it was just once again a shift in technology and all of the possibilities, endless possibilities that I just wanted to be a part of.
And were you trusting your gut on this one as well, where there's this, carbon accounting was fun, but now this is the new interesting thing. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm just going to go do this instead.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
If I'm being truthful, it was just, I was overcome by curiosity and passion, and it's really, I just was so intrigued by what could happen, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, and so I can just see from hindsight that now you're entering into this super competitive field where now Uber and Lyft are looking to grow massively as I guess you're trying to grow Hailo massively in North America. So you have these big competitors. And from what I know of the taxi cab industry, the industry in the UK and Canada are very different. Like, to be like a black cab driver in the UK, you go through like a 2-year, like very rigorous training program.
Totally different.
Yeah, it's really hard to get.
It's a profession there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of respect from the people, and I think now, even till now, like, Uber can't really fully operate in London, right? It's practically all still the black cabs that do it.
Uber is operating.
Okay.
There's a lot more restrictions around what
Right.
they can and can't do, where they can drive, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, Uber's definitely there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm guessing that the difference of the market might have been something that the Hailo execs might have not considered.
Yeah, it was the evolution of where this was going to go. Now, Uber started in black cars. We all know that. They were basically offering people, fancy black cars for a little bit more expensive than a cab, and they were, really pushing the fact that cabs are not clean and not as nice, and those types of things. And they found a really good wedge in the market, and they exploited that. But the real power, that was a linear growth model for Uber. While they definitely had some fast adoption and it was very buzzy, the growth for them came when they saw what Lyft was doing with peer-to-peer. So, anybody, their own car, driving people from A to B. That was the change. That's where the linear growth turned to exponential growth. By taking that model to market aggressively, and that's what did it for Uber and Lyft today. I mean, they're both extremely successful companies. I know many people at both and spend a lot of time with them, and it's amazing to see what has happened in transportation. Where Hailo had a tough time was they heavily aligned themselves with the cab industry. They didn't believe that cities, municipalities would capitulate when it came to rules and regulations. And they didn't believe that the market would be opened up to anybody with their own car driving people from A to B. But we, and most of that's based on being in London, listening to the black cab drivers, which again, it is a profession. They make very good money. It's very tough to get into. Whereas in North America, it's an entry-level job. It's a working man's, working woman's role in society. If you're going to drive a cab, it's kind of like, it's a tough gig. And even the drivers here, the taxi drivers here, which I was lucky enough to get to know thousands of them, and when I did Hailo, and they just want to make a living. They want to make a better living. So with the restrictions of a 12-hour shift that the cab company brokerages were offering at a pretty expensive, lease fee, when Uber came out with their, you can work when you want, you can use your own car, and all of the incentives that they provided, it was like the promised land for a lot of drivers. So they moved over. They abandoned the cab industry and they moved over to ride sharing. Gave them more flexibility in their life, more time with their family. The earnings were better at the time with the subsidies that Uber was providing. So it just made sense. And our team, the operators that were here in North America, we knew it. We talked to the global executive team. I was a part of the global executive team. We had many conversations about the power of ride sharing and how can we do that here. And just wasn't supported because they had painted themselves into a corner and they had aligned themselves with the cab industry. So it's just one of those things where I didn't control the decision. We built a beautiful business here in Toronto. I don't know if you were using it at the time, but it was such an amazing marketplace to actually see. So many people loved it, defended it, stood by it. We competed head to head against Uber with their mountains of money, their marketing dollars, but we just built a great service. We had 85,000 customers, 3,000 cab drivers. We were almost at 10 million annual revenue. Just an amazing story. One of the top performing Hailo markets in the world, but unfortunately, south of the border, competition with Uber was really, really difficult. Lyft was entering quickly into the markets that we were in, and it was just a decision. They just decided to move back to Europe, where they were strong. It was their base, and they had the support of local governments. They were just sort of more in their own strategic element there. They were making money. They could a great opportunity to retrench. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the Hailo story. It was the greatest experience of my life. Very tough to say goodbye to it. I won't mince words. It was probably the most devastating business period of my life. Personally, it was very hard to let it go. I poured my heart and soul into it. Everybody that was a part of it knew that. I treated it like my own, and that was a mistake. I thought it was my company, and it wasn't. And it's just I learned so many lessons. I learned about myself. I learned about business. I learned about technology. I learned about marketplaces. And that's life. Live and learn, and I think it was a success in many, many ways. It doesn't exist anymore, so I guess from a business perspective, if something doesn't exist, it failed, and I've accepted that.
What was the most memorable learning that you had?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. I had the opportunity to work with just the greatest people. We had such an amazing team at Hailo. Like, everybody was just rowing in the same direction, completely supportive. We were all up to, this massive task in a very competitive environment. But everyone was just bought in, and it was beautiful. The magic, the team, the dynamic we had was just that's one thing I'll always remember. And that nucleus is why the cab driving community got behind us and supported it. Like, they were, we had, what I loved most about it is that we opened up the office to the cab drivers of Toronto. We weren't, this exclusive, you can't come in world. We actually designed the office to be a driver's lounge in addition to where we did business. We'd have a little TV area, living room area. Our washrooms were open to drivers, cab drivers. One of the most difficult things about being a cab driver is, you have no access to a washroom, and sort of like back to humanity, right? It's like, what do you mean? How does that? They're not allowed into the brokerage offices. So we just opened up our entire world and our friendships and our community to the cab drivers, and it was a beautiful thing. That's what I'll always remember. I mean, I still see cab drivers on a regular basis. When I'm out on the street, they'll honk and say hi, and we created a beautiful community in a very short time, and it was a service that benefited many. That's what I loved about it.
And so you've had about 3 successful companies that you founded. Now you decide, okay, I'm going to join a company, and it ends up closing shop. And so you take some time off. You're advising other companies, given your extensive experience and network, and then you finally decide to start another company.
Well, there's a little bit of an important transition in there where when Hailo was wrapping up, quite a few companies descended on us to do some due diligence and understand how we built the marketplace so quickly, why Toronto stood out, and why it succeeded and the others didn't. How did we get that? We caught lightning in a bottle here in Toronto, and it didn't happen in Chicago, New York, DC, Atlanta, anywhere else in North America, so they wanted to know why. So we entertained several companies that came in and wanted to spend some time with us, one of which was Transdev North America, which is one of the largest multimodal transportation companies in North America, and their team came in and we spent 3 days with them, and out of that came an introduction to the CEO. I went down to DC to spend some time with him at his invitation, and we got along extremely well. He was very curious as to what my experience was and my learnings were in all of the different areas, not just at Hailo, but in the previous transportation companies as well. So he offered me a role to work directly with him on some special projects, and so I took that. His name's Mark Joseph, and those, the next year and a half spent with Mark were just amazingly wonderful. Months, both from a growth perspective, a healing perspective. So that gave me perspective once again, and it was out of that time spent with understanding Transdev's business and looking at a bunch of different things that they could do differently in this world of disruption. I mean, there were many different divisions were being challenged by new technology, and my role was to help them understand, how to evolve, maybe to take a look at a couple different acquisitions and additions to their team, that kind of thing. So it was amazing from that perspective strategically. It kept me close to the world of transportation and technology, but it also, I had a great experience working with Mark. Just an amazing entrepreneur himself, and just a great person. So that's when the origination of Flexday started.
Yeah, and you wrote a nice article piece on your own LinkedIn about the birth of Flexday and how it came up from, once again, solving a frustration, that a problem you saw where it was really personal to you, and that the workspace that you had created or the office space just wasn't doing it for you. It wasn't allowing your creative juices to flow. You just felt like you couldn't innovate. You felt constrained. Mm-hmm. And that's when you decided to just create a company that could solve that problem for all the other people. How did the first 6 months of Flexday go? It's been in operation for about a year and a half, just past that now. And yeah, how the first 6 months were you now in the process of, you had, in essence, you talk about, you have a family now, so you're not the young Justin who could start a bunch of companies before, and now you're deciding, I'm going to start another company from scratch. Not even in the transportation industry that you have, long years of experience in. So how does the first 6 months go for starting Flexday?
Yeah, so it doesn't appear to be in the transportation industry, but in fact, the root of Flexday is in the transportation industry. So I've always been obsessed with the commute. It's the biggest transportation problem in the world. It rips families apart. It causes stress. It steals time. It's just full of frustration. But people do it all the time, and they're doing it because it's like it's expected of them. It's almost like you must come to the office. It's like, which to me needs to change. So people are spending, half an hour each way, 45 minutes each way, an hour each way, 2 hours each way. And in many cases, the work that they're doing when they arrive, it could be done anywhere. So what are the existing commute solutions? Faster trains, more lanes, all of those things fill up. They've tried to do this over and over again. So the biggest transportation issue or problem in the world is the commute, and I was obsessed with, okay, how do we look at this differently? And one of my earliest ideas was called Office X, which was basically like anybody can open an office and welcome people in anywhere. Any company, any empty space or half empty space could become a new location to work. And the whole vision was around and driven by proximity. The only way to solve the commute is to eliminate it, and all unnecessary commuting. And the only way to do that is through proximity to a viable, dependable workspace that is around the corner. And there's so much empty space. There's so much excess space. Restaurants being the tip of the iceberg. It's just sort of everywhere. It just needs to be activated. And that's the genesis of Flexday. That's what came out of our sandbox, and that's what we started with. And the obvious entry point is restaurants. Other people are doing it around the world. We're not the only people doing this. I think there's a lot of innovation happening around workspace, be it expensive, fancy co-working places, or more ground level community-based stuff like we're doing. But I truly believe we're going to be the ones that crack the code and basically create functional workspaces around every corner. And that's how Flexday got started.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. No, the commute kills. When I was a management consultant, like everyone constantly, like students ask me, "Oh, do you get to travel a lot? Do you like to travel?" And I always have to tell them that travel sucks. It's work commute. It's not vacation travel. It's nothing like that. It's not like you're going to, like Tokyo for a month and you get all the free time to do what you want. Travel sucks. You usually go to a pretty shitty part of the country in the middle of nowhere in a bad hotel, and so I think I was a unique consultant who specifically requested no travel.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to be on a plane. I didn't want to be in a car. I didn't want to be anywhere. The office was a 10-minute walk from where I lived, and that was exactly what I wanted to keep.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's when the shifting of the paradigm is just when you realize that you lose so much time.
Exactly.
From commuting.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So many people are in that trap.
Yeah, and my friends considered that I was really weird in doing this, but when I went to Calgary, I would map out, I'd triangulate grocery store, work, and my gym. The three places I spend the most amount of time on, and I would find a condo in the middle,
right,
regardless of price. That would just be it.
Yeah. No, that's forward thinking. That's exactly how, but in that scenario, in your scenario, the only person required for permission was yourself. Unfortunately, in many work arrangements, there's expectations set by team managers or team leads or CEOs or VP level that you need to be here, and it's understandable to a degree. Once a week maybe, but literally every day. I think that time could be recaptured and used in so many ways. And that's what we're trying to do. We're really, in the big picture, we're trying to unlock freedom and unlock excess space that's sitting there and breathe life back into neighborhoods and communities. And why does everybody have to vacate their community every day or their neighborhood and go downtown or wherever it is up to some industrial park? Why can't they stay in their neighborhood and adjust accordingly and work with their neighbors and their communities side by side and the businesses that exist? So I think it's a gradual transition, but I think the reality is that there are some macro forces that are really driving this type of thinking, and we want to be a solution to meet all of that demand.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of great industry-leading companies that are embracing that remote model where you start treating people like adults and trusting them. And you and I are both big fans of Jason Fried and DHH's work. And there's other great companies like Buffer, Zapier that are all remote organizations that do it well. And from what you've experienced as running Flexday, what kind of pushback have you felt from both organizations, but also restaurants? Do restaurants push back on letting people come in and use your space?
Yeah, there's old paradigms, in the world of restaurants. Some owners understand and can see the future. Owners, managers, decision makers, whatever they are. It's different usually at each place, but the reality is we get two types of conversations. One is, there's no way in the world I want people with laptops open in my space. And then the other one, which is such a refreshing conversation, which we're having more and more of every day, is I know these people live in the neighborhood and they're currently working at home, or they're struggling to work from a coffee shop, or whatever, and they need a better place to work, and we want to be a part of the community, a community hub. We welcome them into our space, and we'll actually create a designated area for them over here, back room, second floor, and they start to use their space more intelligently, and they start to build relationships with these people, with the Flexday members that come in and become their customers. And in every instance, it's turned into new customers, new relationships, and just a better world in that little area.
And it seems that the company's MO is still aligned to your passion of social responsibility, humanity, in the element of eliminating commute, creating communities. How did you know that, or when did you know that social responsibility was this kind of big passion area for you?
I am not sure. I just think, I feel like ever since every idea I have, it's woven into it somehow. And that might feel or sound a little bit out there, but it just kind of is. It's like for the most part, everything that I've ever done from a business perspective has an angle that is beneficial to society or to people, one way or another, and that has always been what has helped make the business successful and different. A good idea is a good idea, but if a good idea is helping people, I just find like it sort of illuminates, illuminates what the business is all about, gives it a purpose, and people like that. Like, it brings people together. I don't really know if there was a lightning bolt one day that was like, I'm going to build socially responsible businesses, but there really wasn't. I just have identified things that I wanted to change, and then I would go after and try to change them.
Yeah, trusting your gut.
Yeah, just sort of following my passion. Just kind of the way it's been.
Yeah. No, I think I think that's the most honest form of why you do what you do. When you can't sleep thinking about the problem, when you forget to eat, and it's just continuously there, then you know that I think I have to do it. Or you tell everyone about it, no one else does anything about it. Mm-hmm. So you give all your ideas away, but you're the only one that's passionate about it, so you just feel like you have to do it.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you just gotta throw yourself out there and just hope you'll be caught. And,
yeah.
It's just part of the game.
Yeah.
It's part of living a life that's, I guess, a little bit out of the ordinary and full of unknowns, but I've tried the predictable job world, and it's just not for me. I know it's for others and people like that safety, but I just feel like I'm not alive.
And I think that kind of self-awareness is immensely important, to just live the life that's suited for you. And as we wrap up to the final parts of the interview, the kind of staple questions I ask at the end. The first one being, what is a belief that you have that you think goes against the conventional wisdom?
What is a belief that I have that goes against conventional wisdom? I believe in 10 years from now that workspace will be free. You won't have to pay for what is one of the most expensive pieces of life right now. So yeah, I think it's going to be completely democratized and opened up, and the ability to get work done, focused work or group work, will not cost you an arm and a leg, and will not require travel. It'll be free and it will be everywhere.
Amen. I believe that too. And we'll hopefully see a future like that coming sooner than 10 years. And if your 20-year-old self, so I guess Justin in third year, Miguel, still getting his Bachelor of Education, were to look at where you are now, what do you think his emotional reaction would be?
I think he'd say, I knew it. I think he'd say, yeah, I knew that's where you'd be. Not with any more in the realm of, you're doing your own thing. And, it's sort of evident to my 20-year-old self, becoming more evident at that time, to, that it would be an interesting path. Because I wasn't doing what everybody else was doing. And I sort of felt like, I've got to do it on my own and get to it and blaze the trails.
And what kind of advice would you like to have given to your 20-year-old self?
I think it's really, it's rooted in listen to your gut. It's rooted in be kind.
Yeah, in a world that's obsessed with data, I try to stress more so that believing in gut and intuition, it actually has value in so many cases. And
100%.
Yeah, I think your story has definitely been an example of one such case. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with myself and the guests. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. It's been, I've never talked through my journey before, so this has been really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really helpful in many ways too. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I guess that happens when you're not applying for jobs and not taking so many interviews.
Yeah, that's the end result.
Yeah, and so for some of our listeners who, might be budding entrepreneurs or who are young people who want to escape the office and they want to use Flexday, how can they find the product itself?
Yeah, just, obviously flexday.com. You can go and check it out there. We have 20 locations across Toronto now. It's all driven through an app. Download the Flexday app. Sign up. When you create an account, you get a free week to try it out. And if you have any feedback, let me know. It's Justin at flexday.com. I love conversations around the service and what you think about it. And when you love it and you're ready to join, it's $49 a month, which is less than most people spend on coffee in a week. So
it's true. I did the math.
Yeah. It's right there.
Great. All right. Thanks a lot, Justin.
Thank you very much, Dan.
So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please check out other episodes and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date for the future episodes. Also, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, whichever is applicable to you. To see past episodes, you can go to oldmandan.com/podcasts. Also, you can sign up to my weekly newsletter on my blog, oldmandan.com/newsletter. You can stay up to date with future podcast episodes that way, and included in the newsletter are my book reviews I write, my weekly article related to the domain of self-development systems, as well as 7 things I learned throughout the week on being healthy, wealthy, and wise. Finally, special thanks to icons8.com for allowing me to use their music, Tiny People, on the podcast. Great. I will see you all next time. Take care.